I owe you a minute. I owe you a minute, everybody. Oh, could it be a minute and 50 seconds? Sorry about that. It's Wednesday. People are already bringing the heat. We're going to see how well I survive on this one. First question, Eric P. Is the Lord the perfect combination of love and truth? And is that why he is all of heaven? Can we meet him in a human form in heaven and learn from him, or is he only his qualities now? You can meet the Lord in human form in heaven. Swedenborg talks about a Lord appearing like an angel in angelic communities. So that would mean like Jesus in the Bible, where instead of saying, I know you're watching me out there, God, somewhere, you could be ostensibly, he's standing there and you say, hey, I'm a big fan. Can you sign this thing for me? The perfect combination of love and truth, is that why he is all of heaven? The Lord is the perfect combination because he's infinite love and infinite truth, and he is all of that. So it's not like he's truth combined together, not saying this is what you meant, but for the viewing public, it's not like there's love and truth and combine it together, you get the Lord. The Lord is all the love and all of the truth. And so because of that, there's this involuntary balance, because it's infinite plus infinite. Why he is all of heaven is because heaven is made up of angels, which are people who are living the Lord's life rather than the life of the love of self and love of the world. So their life is coming from the Lord, so he's dwelling in them like a soul in the body, which I know is the next question by April E. It says, how can we be led by the Lord and not by oneself? It would be great to ask how to handle X and be told what to do. I can ask. However, it's a one-sided conversation. It's just what I was talking about there. And it's such a good point, because nothing is more frustrating than a desire for a connection to your creator, to your cosmic parent, to the being that is responsible for you being here and life existing. And you say, hey, I need your help. Can you? And there's nothing. And I had that so bad when I was in college and I was having this breakdown of sorts. I was really depressed and I was really anxious and I was really religious too. I had Swedenborg's books and they were telling me God is right there and what you're going through might be a spiritual crisis. And I was really into, hey, can you talk to me? I am right here. Where are you? Can you talk to me? And still now, I would love to get marching orders. Oh, man, if I could wake up and God has texted me, here's what you should or shouldn't pursue today, of course I would want to do that. So how do you do that? Because Swedenborg says that it's critical to be led by the Lord rather than oneself. So to be led by something is to intend it from love. We're always led by our affections, and our affections come to us either from our sense of self, which is our sense of our own importance, which Swedenborg says is connected to hell, or we're led by the Lord. But being led by the Lord is being led by what the Lord loves, because that's what he extends to us. And what the Lord loves is doing useful things to others, serving the human race. So to be led by the Lord is to be intending to devote your life's energy to making the world better in whatever way you have access to do that. So I think that as we get more and more regenerate and more angelic, you can get to the point where even your thoughts and what your choices would be, you're aware of. I wouldn't say exactly, because I don't think God is ever looking to put you into, here's exactly what you have to do, but you would get much more sense of what is and isn't inside the divine design. But I think for us, this is not a very satisfying answer, but the only thing you can do is identify things that are against the 10 Commandments and work on not participating in those in your life. And then the Lord has access to instill feelings of goodness and usefulness. Led by another thing that's coming to me too is the Lord is the Word. So being led by those principles rather than God being sort of finite. And today, this is what I want you to do. Although I'm sure divine wisdom has what it would do if it could in any particular day. But it's more like there's these eternal principles, like, for example, be led by the Lord, be not by oneself. Don't have care for the morrow. Don't hold hatred, which is part of the murder commandment. These eternal things about how it all works is being led by the Lord. Oh, and you even say, April says that in the next comment. Way ahead of me. Perhaps what he means is being led to follow the Lord's teachings, though being told what to do seems more appealing because I often have no clue what I'm doing and it can be nerve-wracking. I know. And I think that, yes, it's as far as I know, you can follow the teachings. And when we don't know what to do in a particular situation, something that's comforting to me is knowing that we're not making that choice. It's divine providence. It seems that we make the choice between good and evil, but how things actually unfold, and even the thought process that we go through, in some way, divine providence has got that on rails. And it's no fun not knowing what to do, but the only thing I think we do to counter that is develop a healthy sense of the Lord is actually the doer here. And so whenever anything good happens, be like, hey, the Lord did that. It seemed to me like at the time I was doing it. And whenever something bad happens, it's like, hey, hell got through, whether they got through me or they got through someone else. Tough questions. Good. Tough but fair. Hi, Curtis. This is from Chris. Hi, Curtis. What's your favorite Swedenborgian work that isn't by Swedenborg? So on the Swedenborg topic, but not by Swedenborg, that would be, I would say, The Presence of Other Worlds by Wilson Van Dusen. It's really just him explaining what Swedenborg means, but he does it in a really illuminating form. I haven't read it in quite some time, but I remember really digging that book when I read it. Hello, now 3 in Berlin. Matthew Bush has a question. Hi, Curtis. Question. I have just watched Pilgrimage and was wondering if the falsities people believe and atrocities done in the name of the Lord are held against them. What's pilgrimage? I gotta look this up. Pilgrimage. So I have a little context here. What? It's just give me the... Is this the movie? 2017? Pilgrimage are we talking about? Let me go to the bottom of the chat. Which pilgrimage? It's like with Tom Holland in it? Okay, I'll just give a generic answer. I mean, not generic, but not one where I'm considering this particular show because I haven't seen it. But let's get back to this question. I just watched Pilgrimage and was wondering if the falsities people believe and atrocities done in the name of the Lord are held against them. Nothing's held against anybody if they believe they're doing the right thing. Which may seem frustrating because people can do horribly destructive things. But if they genuinely think that what they're doing is charitable. I do think everybody has a sense a sense that's developed throughout their lives of what's right and what's wrong. I think this is a goal of divine providence, that you get that this is not right. And I think you do have to engage in reflection in order to really see that. You have to take time to really think about your motives and actions and get a sense. If you are doing something and you really do think this is the right thing to do, that's actually what matters. Swedenborg has this passage where he says, even if somebody, I forget exactly how he puts it, but something akin to, even if somebody destroyed the entire Christian church and did all these other terrible things, but they did it for a good motive, that would look good in the sight of heaven. And even if somebody built up all of the church and did all these great things for the poor and the needy and all that, but did them for a self-centered, domineering motive, it doesn't do anything to contribute to their heavenly state. I do think that people who do atrocious things, believing they're doing what's right, can and should be stopped. And I think that somewhere along the line, there's actual evil. I mean, the evil spirits that are pushing them into it, or the people who introduce those wrong ideas. You never really know anyone's individual spiritual state. But in general, if somebody thinks they're doing what's right and they're acting really genuinely from a belief that they're trying to help, then we can't condemn them, even if what they did was wrong. Randy Hall says, how do people get around in heaven, and are there bugs in heaven? I really hate those flying winged bugs that want to bite you all the time. Are you talking about mosquitoes? No-see-ums? People get around in heaven. Spiritual distance is not like physical distance. It's spiritual, so it has to do with what you want and what you love and believe. So he says very clearly there that when two people want to see each other, they come face to face. Travel is, even though there are things like, he does describe chariots and things like that, but it seems that those are more representations of the kind of minds people have. It's not necessary for transportation. Bugs that bite you, I don't think there actually would be. It seems to me that abrasive life forms that need to harm others to live, correspond more to the mindset that's in hell, and you find those things in hell. Not that any individual, like a no-see-um, is evil. All animals are just acting on the instinct they have, but they find their environment in the kinds of thoughts and feelings that make up hell. Sort of like flies are attracted to trash. So the things in heaven, I'm not saying there's not insects in heaven, but probably not biting ones. I don't know that for sure. I'd be fascinated to find the answer out. Randy Hall says, I see you wear dark colors a lot. Dark colors absorb white light and colors reflect. There's a lot of evil in this world. Do you really want to reflect? Good guys wear white. But something about what I wear on this is that if I wear a white shirt on this show, it will blow out the camera and I'll look funny. So some of it is like, ain't good or bad. It's just technology. Follow-up question from Matthew Bush. Sometimes I find myself rooting for the bad guy or sympathizing with an evil character in movies. Can movies like that do harm spiritually? I wonder why. You definitely will just get teams you start to pull for in a movie. And sure, there's sometimes when I'm hoping that the bad guy does well. Sometimes it's just so that the drama of the movie will continue. But I don't know really how to investigate that. I would say, like, why are you sympathizing with this evil character? Sympathizing with an evil character, angels have a ton of sympathy for everyone who's in hell. They would trade places with them if they could, says Swedenborg. But that's not the same as they would enable that person to go do the harm. They'd still have to go fight against them, even if they sympathized. So movies like that do harm. I guess if a movie, if it can teach you to enjoy and justify evil things, then yeah, that's spiritual harm. But it probably could just give you the inclination to it. And then if you go act it out in your life, but what's the difference between movies and life? I'm not sure. But the spiritual harm is when, if anything, can encourage you to justify and commit harmful things. Okay. Hey, Tristan. All right, let's see. What do we got here? Barbara Gadesis says, is Putin the Antichrist? Does he have specific signs? No single person, regardless of whether they're wrapped up in evil or not, is the Antichrist. According to Swedenborg, that the prophecies that occur, for example, in the book of Revelation aren't about physical events, they're about spiritual events. So the Antichrist itself, I'd have to go back and check, but I'm pretty certain that it's the things that the Christ is God But also, as we're saying for the very first question in this, it's God's will. It's what God wants us to do. Really, we are all what we love. We are all what we love. Love is our life. So what we intend to do makes us who we are. So God intends to do well to everyone and wish the lasting happiness of everyone. So the Antichrist is the opposite of that. Is wishing well to yourself alone and enjoying in some way the suffering of others. And that can pop up in any of us, famous or not famous. I am well, the cube, thank you. Tristan Beale, why didn't Swedenborg use his abilities to act as a medium for people so to gain fame and sell more books? He did a little. I don't know how much. We did a couple of podcast episodes in our Inside Off the Left Eye podcast where Chelsea had explored Swedenborg's publicity strategy. And he did a lot of things to try to gain fame. And I don't know if you sell more books, sure, distribute them. He wasn't making money off the books. He had told the printers they could keep any money from the sale of the books, but he definitely wanted more of them sold. He did a couple of high-profile medium-like incidents. He told a queen or some member of the nobility or royalty something that only her dead brother could have known, and that apparently made a big impression. He told one woman where a will that had gotten lost was, and this was something her dead relative of her had told, and that caused a big stir. He did the Gothenburg fire incident where he did say, "Oh, this fire is broken out in my hometown." But it's true, it didn't seem like he had an organized campaign of I'm going to tell everyone what's going on with their loved ones who have died. And so he did it some, but I guess he just didn't think that was the right strategy. He was distributing his book. He was using some of that, but he was also distributing his books to what he thought were influencers. That seemed to be his main strategy, sending them to clergy. And he would include written accounts of, that's sort of what heaven and hell was, that people weren't listening to Secrets of Heaven, so he put out heaven and hell with more afterlife stuff. I do think he wasn't that great of a public speaker. I've heard he had a stutter. It may just be that trying to get in front of a group of people and do mediumship, he didn't think he could do it. So cool. Miguel says, I want to know about the 7 seals. Now, wait a second. I think we did a show. We did. Yes. Here's one. I'm going to put this in the chat. Are you ready? Miguel, we did a show that's called, for those of you who are watching afterwards, The 7th Seal, Wormwood, and 7 Angel Trumpets, Swedenborgian Life Live. There's a link to it, but any of you can search that, or just search Seal Swedenborg, Seals Swedenborg, and you'll see some of our episodes of it. I'm going to give you that because it's a pretty complex, long explanation, and I don't even remember all of it. So, head there, man. Richard's question, does all of this mean we are predestined for either heaven or hell? And if we do go to heaven or go to hell, we're going to be there to the end of time? Swedenborg is adamant that nobody's predestined for hell. So he says everybody's predestined for heaven. I guess when he's using that word, he doesn't mean, I think commonly people would think of predestination to mean it's already written in the stars, this is what's going to happen. I think what he means by it is everybody is born on the track toward heaven. That everything is set up so that God, through his divine providence, will take us to heaven. And the only way we don't go is if we opt out of that. If we make the effort to resist that and go in the opposite direction to hell. If we go to heaven or go to hell, are we going to be there until the end of time? Oh, I hope not. Well, I hope so. For heaven, yes. For hell, I hope not. Swedenborg has some conflicting stuff about this. He says that your nature can't be changed after death. But he also, so that would seem to indicate, okay, you've created a nature that's either at home or heaven and hell, and so it stays there. But he also talks extensively about everything that happens to you in hell is ridding you of your desire for certain evils. Earlier in his works, he's talking about people that come out of hell into heaven. Later, it seems like he's saying, well, that was actually the lower earth, which is a place that's like surrounded by hell, where you can experience hellish discomfort, but you're not actually in love with what's in hell, so you're not in there. Personally, I just don't believe that the point of divine providence, the point of everything is heaven. This Swedenborg clearly states that the reason anything exists is so that people can be put in a happy state in heaven forever. So I just doubt that God is going to permanently accept failure on that. Greg says, what does Immanuel say about magic or manifesting? Well, I don't know what you mean by magic. Manifesting, and if you're talking about, I want this thing and so it will appear, I don't think that really is how it works. I think physical laws and divine providence, working through those laws, are what make this happen here. And by this, sorry, I got distracted for a second. By this, what I mean is by what happens in your life. Magic, if you're talking about, you got that alternate spelling on it there, but if it's magic, Swedenborg seemed to take magic pretty seriously. When he would talk about a lot of times when he's using that word, he'll use it in a negative sense, and what he means by it is he'll say that the evil spirits that he met in hell who can do all kinds of supernatural, powerful things to you. He talks about people who in the world knew how to do these incantations and things that would make somebody be romantically attracted to them, or they can even harm people through this. He seemed to think that negative magic was alive and well, and it's a real thing people can do. In the afterlife, people get even more deeply into it. I'm sure that it happens. It would have to happen through some system. When he talks about the ancient Egyptians being able to do magic, he says it was through an abuse of correspondences that they could do that. That's not to say that there's probably not good use of correspondence. That would be the good magic. But Leah says, has Swedenborg ever talked about addictions, like alcoholism, for example? I don't think that the study of addictions was very developed in his time. Didn't we do a show about this? All right, we got it. Swedenborg addictions. I think we did a show called Do Spirits Play a Role in Addiction? Yeah, we did it. The show is called Do Spirits Play a Role in Addiction? And this was something that it's not like you could lift it just right out of a Swedenborg book, like a section he had, but I'm putting it in the chat right here. If you look at what he says about how spirits arouse wants and cravings in us, it does seem to fit with you getting taken over by a desire and then can't live without it, that there would be spiritual reinforcement. And that's why, evil, when he talks about things like stealing, you can be a kleptomaniac or you can't stop stealing, that is hellish communities that get more and more entrenched in you when you commit it, and then it's harder and harder to get them out. Okay. And what happens to addicts after they die? Is there mercy for them? There's mercy for everybody. And everybody's circumstances are taken into account. If, for example, you already have a predisposition to, let's stick with stealing. You have a predisposition to it by your heredity. So you, like me, Curtis, I stole some things when I was like a little kid, or like a young teenager. I remember from like a little convenience store. I remember taking some things, so that was bad. But I think I just was a brainless, 11-year-old or what. I don't know how old I was, and that's. I'm not super worried about that. I feel bad. Like I realize now more and more that it's just hurtful thing to do, but circumstances are there, and if I need to somehow do penance for that, I would like to, because I don't want a world in which people are stealing from each other. But overall, the point I'm trying to make is that beyond that, it hasn't been a big deal for me. I haven't ever needed to steal to survive. I just don't have like an urge to steal things like some people do. So let's say somebody has that heredity. Let's say that somebody is surrounded by an environment that kind of leads them toward that. They end up like addicted to stealing. Of course, it's going to be mercy, and to divine providence is always aware of what the mitigating circumstances are, and it's not it never judges, so it wouldn't want to punish you anyway. It would only want to say you've got to get rid of that desire before you can come into heaven. So we got to try to get rid of it for you. The same would, I think, go with any addiction. And some addiction, I'm sure that it can skew really physical, where it's just the way that you're wired, or you've gotten a chemical dependency and you can't break it. And then when you leave your body, I would imagine that you leave that behind. Panararu, am I on Wednesday? Yeah, you're on Wednesday. All of you are on Wednesday. Maija says, what did Swedenborg say about war/aggressions, about our reactions to escape, to fight, turn the cheek, possibly get beaten and killed? Yeah, so Swedenborg is not a pacifist. He doesn't say that it's intrinsically wrong to fight. He says that wars are, let's talk about wars first. Wars are almost always something divine providence is not thrilled about, because wars, as Swedenborg puts it, always consist of all manner of violence, hatred, cruelty, suffering, and things that are diametrically opposed to, I think, as he puts it, Christian charity. So it's not good. However, he says that there's times when if for example, the country is under threat of being taken over or something, there's a dire threat looming, there's times when you've got to protect yourself from it. He says that it should all, and taking it down to the individual, let's say there's somebody threatening you, you can fight them. You can fight them. He talks about you have to strike them if you have to strike someone in self-defense, or turn them over to a judge and have them prosecuted. That can be not evil, because it's what you're having to do to protect yourself and others. What makes it what it is the intent and the ultimate goal of it. So if you are doing those things, like you have to fight back in some way, verbally, whatever it is, but you would relent as soon as the attacker comes to their senses, or is neutralized, or is not a threat, and you're not trying to then destroy them, and you're not doing it. Some people kind of walk around looking for an excuse to defend themselves and hurt someone doing it. It's got to not be something that you're doing for the joy of it. It's what emotion, what desire is animating you is what matters. So turning the other cheek, that's a spiritual command from Jesus, and what it is about not getting involved in the enjoyment of hell in things. So when you're not resisting an evil person, I have to go back, and he does say some interesting particular things about it, but I'll say in general that it's really about don't fight because you like fight. Man, he had to fight. He had this number that I'm trying to remember a little more of the totality of it, but he was talking about goodness and fighting, and he says that goodness can fight, but it does not plan to fight, and it does not boast about when it conquers. even though it always conquers in the end. So there's a couple of thoughts on that. Post-Nap Coffee says, hi, love the channel and the Bible commentaries on the Swedenborg Foundation site. Cool. Does Swedenborg talk about how to want God's will more than ours, or more details about what that means in practice? Yeah. And hi, Lupe. Sort of like what the question I was doing early, to not start the show, but the second question. Okay, so you're talking about how to want God's will more than ours. Okay. Well, what is God's will and what's our will? God's will is the eternal happiness of every member of the human race, and that all people would become happier forever. That's God's will. Our will, in the Swedenborgian sense, is our desire to be the greatest and have the most pleasure. And that's the heredity that we're born into. So, how to want God's will more than ours is fundamentally achieved in noticing when our tendencies and motivations are drawing their power from a desire to be greater than other people, or control other people, or rule over other people, on the one hand, or on the other hand, are related somehow to greed or sensory gratification that doesn't serve a use. When those things are coming up as the primary motivators, we don't act on the things they urge us to do. That we say, I won't do that because I think that this is against God's will, because God's will is encapsulated in 10 Commandments and the teachings about charity. So that's how to want God's will more than ours is to lay aside our desires for things that go against God's will, and then to stay away from pride in our own intelligence and love of dominion to the greatest extent that we can. Gosh, well, that's some practice. That's a great question. It's hard. I'm telling you, people are bringing the heat. People are trying to take me down today. This is from Renee or Renee. You told me how to pronounce it before. I forgot. I'm not that great at remembering names and how to say them. So I'm sorry, everyone. Question, Curtis, please. Does Swedenborg ever speak about dark night of the soul? Is it really an outside influence of energies rather than purely within? Grateful always. Yes. The dark night of the soul, he calls it spiritual crises, sometimes translated temptations, and they are completely outside influences, meaning outside spiritual influences. Sure, sometimes we can be led into a spiritual crisis, which is just a time when everything seems like it's really messed up. There can be external factors that add to that. There can be health things that are going on. There can be people that are disrupting our life somehow. But the anguish and the despair you feel inside is heaven and hell clashing. That evil is... I think it starts with God is coming closer to us. God is saying, I'm going to move closer and be part of you more. You're ready. And when he does that, hell that's got its clutches on us, and is trying to keep us away from God and away from that happiness forever that's God's will, it senses God incoming and freaks out and attacks us and tries to pull up everything that's evil in us and use it to attack us with and make us miserable. Heaven then pulls all the good things in us and uses those to fight against hell, and the battle is the resulting distress we feel. We feel it as feelings of despair and whatever, self-loathing or guilt or fear. It's probably different person to person, but it's actually caused by this spiritual battle. Studio LB says, you and I have similar journeys. You're talking about me and you? If so, good, and I'm sorry, because life is a tough journey, but good to know we're not alone. Matt Klein says, with Swedenborg's description of correspondence with the spiritual world, with this world, what must be happening in the spiritual state realm with the strife here, with society tensions as globally. I believe Swedenborg says that disturbance in the world here reflects the state of the church in heaven, the church in the spiritual world, and the church being not like a single religious institution, but the state of human spirituality is one way you could put it. I guess it's the battle between heaven and hell. And that somehow is part of what leads to the conditions that we get here. Sean Smith says, to be born into this state only to learn how bad it is later is the most frustrating thing. Yeah. Jay Lizard, I was just going to say with Sean Smith, it's tough to be like, wait a second, I'm going to have to sort of like figure this out in reverse, that I came into this like love of self and love of the world. It's no good, and it's not how life is supposed to be. This is a result of centuries and centuries of millennia of people making bad choices, and it's not God's will for us to start here. It's not good. We got to fix it. Jay Lizard, what do you know of E.S.'s grandfather? Oh man, I don't think I know anything about Swedenborg's grandfather. You may think, hey, this guy is a Swedenborg nerd. He knows so much about Swedenborg. I do, compared to your average person, but there are much greater scholars of Swedenborg than I who could probably tell you about that. I bet Dr. Jonathan Rose knows about that. Chelsea probably knows about that. I don't know anything about Swedenborg's grandfather. Sorry. Studio LB is why I enjoy your channel. Good. I like having you here. Sean Smith says, love loves to be loved. That's right. Love doesn't just want to love. It also wants to be loved in return. That's part of the equation. Okay. Philip Ray. Hi, Curtis. What is the Swedenborgian view on monasticism? Are there any Swedenborgian monks or nuns? Thanks. Generally, it doesn't seem like Swedenborg has a lot of support for monasticism for two reasons. One is he doesn't view celibacy as a really desirable spiritual state. He really likes chastity, but not celibacy. So to him, a monogamous, committed marriage relationship where you're trying not to lust after other people outside of it is the most spiritually potent state that you can get into, and that's the one that exists in heaven. He talks about people who have been celibate, but usually not. It doesn't usually seem to have done a lot for their spiritual life. I don't want to, there may be some people who that's what works for them, and it can be a path toward what's good, so I don't want to totally discount it. But he doesn't say, like, there's some religions that say it's preferable to never have had sex than to be in a sexual relationship, and Swedenborg is very much not saying that. The other thing he says against monasticism is that to him, a life of charity and of doing God's will is a life of constructive service for humanity. So one of the foundation of your expression of charity to people is often the occupation you have, and doing that service for society honestly, justly, and faithfully. So to be apart from the world and in a place where you're just meditating on concepts and things would not necessarily give you a leg up. Now, there's like a bunch of really great monks in the world. I got to, not so long ago, we had a monk. Actually, it was, I guess, quite a number of years ago, but we had a Buddhist monk on interview with him on this channel, and he was making this sand mandala and talking about what it means, and just seems like a really lovely spiritual person. So I'm not saying it can't be a factory that produces angels, but Swedenborg doesn't have the impetus to go pursue that lifestyle that other Christian traditions had that were around him. Eric says, question, Swedenborg says we are locked in our mental state at death, but in his spiritual experience, he says there is a vastation and purging of sins as well. How to reconcile? Yeah, it's the thing that happens after you die, you enter the world, the world of spirits, and there you are purged so that your externals match your internals. So we're made up of a bunch of complexities of good things and bad things, true things and false things, things that are just about in the middle. But there's a ruling character or love that we have. There's something that is really what we love above all and what we're really aiming toward and what gives us the most pleasure in life. That, whatever that is determined by our life in the world and the process that happens after death is that everything that doesn't harmonize with that. So, for example, if your love is a good love, if you love being useful, you love doing things that help people, that is exciting to you to think of how can I make life better for people, to get them into a state of happiness in whatever particular way you do that. Then the evil and false things you have, the little bits of narcissism or crassness or whatever, that stuff will cause you anguish as your ruling love pulls you into heaven, right? Because that ruling love of wanting to find ways to make people happy, that will pull you into heaven, and these things that are not heavenly will cause you discomfort. So in the world of spirits, the discomfort causing negative things, and you are not removed but made quiescent, put to sleep, or somehow removed from your day-to-day consciousness so that you can go into heaven and exist there happily. The same thing is true with going into hell. If the primary thing that you enjoy has to do with dominance or cruelty or greed or some kind of destructive lust, then that wants to go to hell because its joy is there. In heaven, you're not allowed to do any of those things. In hell, people can do those things at times. And so it wants to go where it can do those things. But if you have good things in you, if you have bits of decency or manners or something, those good things will cause you a lot of distress when you go into hell. So there's a process to make those things quiescent so that you can live the happiest possible life you can live in hell. I was just talking to Jonathan Rose about this, and he was saying heaven and hell are both organized by God to make the people who are there the happiest they can possibly be. They're actually run pretty similarly. The people there have communities based on what they love. The difference is that in heaven you love what is good and kind, and you're allowed to do it as much as you want. In hell you love what's destructive and disgusting, and there are strict limits placed on how much you can do it, and there's punishment if you go over, because those things just you can't do them without hurting other people or hurting yourself further. So it's just a much more frustrated existence. Jay Norris says, I'm wondering how can anyone not pay attention to history that they grew up with? The suffering and misery they witnessed, and yet they turn around and do the same or worse to people. And Jay says, please don't say free will. I just don't feed the bulldog. Okay, I was going to say free will, but it's all about pleasure. Pleasure is what does it. How can people witness suffering and misery and yet turn around and do the same or worse to people? It's got to be because there's an enjoyment there. There's the desire for power. This is just what we're talking about. There's a dominant love. Like, sure, those people you may be in a state where you understand suffering because you experienced some suffering, but somehow you've cultivated or given into the joy that comes with exercising power over other people. And so you say, well, I love that feeling and I want to get that feeling to act on to get that feeling. And eventually, if your realization that this is not something you'd want done unto you and it's basically gross in some way, you find a way to justify it because you so want that feeling. If the ins and outs of like how does somebody choose evil, I mean, that's probably very complicated. And why doesn't God stop them? And I get it. Like I told you, people are bringing the heat today. But in general, I won't say free will. I'll say it's the pleasure of evil seduces. Did Swedenborg feel he was talking to Socrates and Plato on other planes while he was living? Yes. J Lizard, he did. I know he talked to Aristotle. Did he talk to Socrates and Plato? I know he talked to some of the ancients. He claims to have talked to a lot of famous historical figures. He was a famous guy himself. It maybe makes sense. But yes, it does seem that he was able to go converse with all kinds of thought leaders to compare their worldviews and things. Okay, cool. Robert Martin says, hi, Curtis, question. I know we can talk to the spirits in us, but I was wondering if it's possible to talk to spirits in someone else to help them. Yeah, so you can talk to the spirits in you. I mean, the spirits, so Swedenborg says that there are spirits with you, or spirits around you, and like dwelling in your good and bad affections. But that's a function of how the spiritual world works, that it's outside time and space, so you can share the same space. And this is a setup that's necessary for our consciousness because of the hereditary. I'm just using a bunch of terminology, but if you know the terminology, this is how it works. The hereditary fall of the human race. So people enjoy evil and don't live in the order of heaven that they were created for. So you have to have good and evil spirits around you to give you the good and the evil that'll create the equilibrium that allow you to then choose. Those spirits, the evil spirits, don't know that they're with you, because they would try to destroy you if they did. They don't know directly. I guess they can sometimes, but it seems more like they arouse evil things in you, and maybe other evil spirits attack them. I don't know. He doesn't give a ton of detail about it. But as far as being able to talk to someone else's spirits, influence their spiritual company, I don't know if he ever mentions that. It's a fascinating thought, though. Man, we're out of time. Golly, man. Oh, I'm almost at the end here. Okay, I'm going to see if I can... Oh, no. There's a ton. There's a ton more I didn't even see. I'm not gonna... I thought I could get these last few, but I didn't see there'd been a whole bunch more. Thanks, everybody. If I didn't get your questions, then I'm sorry. And I just want to say that before I was starting this show, I was having such a wave of gratitude that you all would show up and ask these questions and want to sit and talk about it. It's just so cool. So I'm sorry I didn't get to everyone's. Leave your comments below with your questions, and our team will get to them. Or if you're watching this after the fact, leave comments below. Our team will get to it. We try to answer absolutely every comment that we get because we care. We care about. We're grateful. Or I should say we're grateful that you want to talk about this stuff, that you're interested in it. Thanks, everybody. It's been a great Wednesday. A good number of people showed up. That's fun. I'll talk to you soon. Someday, we'll do a Wednesday-a-thon where I'll just go on here for 4 hours or until nobody has any more questions. So we'll pick a good day to do that. And hey, offtheLeftEye.com/donate. Please, we're not for profit. We make money if you donate to our cause. This is how we create the content that reaches people. So go there, donate, and we'll do it. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and thanks for the kind words here at the end. All right, I'm out of here.